As I now make it 7 o'clock, I will start the meeting, if that's okay with everybody. Good evening and welcome to councillors, officers and members of the public and those watching on YouTube. This is a meeting where the public are allowed to attend, but the only time that they may participate is when they've previously arranged to do so through democratic services. The meeting will follow the usual format: apologies for absence, declarations of interest by committee members, and this evening we have 2 items on the agenda. I will ask each of the officers who will give a presentation and recommendations for the said item, and then we have 1 speaker for the first item and 2 speakers for the second. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. And when everyone has spoken, then I'll invite the councillors to ask their questions of the officers and we will debate the item. Councillors have been specially trained and have legal guidelines to follow. Please note it will not help your cause if you try to interrupt. If you've when you've finished your item on the agenda, you may leave. Thank you. Do we have any apologies for absence? I have one for Councillor Beattie. Any more apologies? No.
No, Chair.
And Councillor Kane is substitute for Councillor Beattie. Do I have any members who want to declare any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. We now go to the minutes of the previous meeting. It's actually previous minutes of 2 meetings. So we'll take the first one on the 23rd of June 2020. Do I have any comments? Anthony Dady, Councillor Dady.
Right, yes, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I've got ahead of myself. You said we'll take the first one. I wanted to comment on the second one.
Oh, right, on the second minutes, okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Councillor Addison.
Move the minutes, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Isles seconded, Chair.
Thank you. I'll go through everyone by name. All those in. Can we do this by hand?
No, you just do it by show of hands, Chair.
Right. Thank you. Do we have any? Do we accept these minutes? Any for? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Those minutes are passed. We now move on to the meeting that was reconvened on the 29th of June. Do I have any comments about that? Councillor Dady, are you coming in on that?
Yes, please. Yeah, it's only a small matter, but obviously for accuracy, we should mention it. The very last note on the sheet, close of meeting, it says item number 1. Obviously, that isn't item 1. It says the meeting closed at, and then the sentence ends. So obviously that should be corrected.
Thank you. So noted. But with the correction, can we have anyone to move the minutes or any other comments? Councillor Addison, are you moving the minutes? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Isles. All those in favour for the minutes? Hands, please. Show of hands. All those against? Abstentions? So the minutes are moved. Thank you. Right, now we go to the first item on the agenda, the planning application 20/0016/1, the change of use from C3 dwelling to C2 care home for children at 60 Croyd Avenue. Can I invite the officers concerned to submit their report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's good. That's brilliant. All right. This is an application. It's for 60 Croyd Avenue. It's a mid-terraced house, which you can just go on back. It's a mid-terraced property, which is in a residential area, which was previously used as a single dwelling. Could you do next two further down, please? Yeah, and then that's the one. So there you can see the location of the property. It's just there. The proposal is basically set out in the report, but basically it's an application to change the use of the building to a care home for children. The intention is to take on a maximum of 2 children at any one time with 2 support workers. The premises actually do have planning permission at the moment for the same use, C2 use. Permission is required in this case because the previous approval, which was for a family assessment centre, was limited by a condition because of to make sure that there was adequate parking, if you like, for the premises. So that's why planning permission is actually required in this instance. The assessment of the application set out in the report, but essentially it's considered to be acceptable. In principle, it's considered to be a relatively sustainable development, reusing an existing building that's in a fairly sustainable location, not too far from the town centre. It can be reasonably considered to be viewed as supporting the provision of community services and facilities, and it seemed to be an appropriate use normally to be found in the residential area. There's no alterations to the building itself. The only alterations are that on the frontage, there is a slight increase in the width of the existing hard standing, about ½ a metre to accommodate the second car parking space. Not ideal visually having a hard surface frontage, but it is set slightly down from the road. There is a bit of a grassed area in front of it, and on balance it's felt we couldn't reasonably recommend refusal on those grounds. In terms of amenity, the building isn't going to increase the size at all, so it shouldn't affect light to neighbouring properties. There's no proposal to alter the windows, so it shouldn't significantly alter privacy over and above any that is currently any things may currently occurring at the moment. There is, I think, one of the main concerns is about noise and noise nuisance. Obviously, those have been taken on board. On balance, it's felt that a development of which is housing 2 children with 2 support workers wouldn't necessarily cause excessive noise, and it's a view supported by Environmental Health Council's Environmental Health Service, who haven't raised any objections. Highways have raised a number of concerns, which are set out in the report, and those have been addressed also in the report. On balance, it's felt that this scheme is more likely to cause issues of highway safety. There will be 2 spaces provided, which is considered to be adequate for a development of nature. There's no turning, but there isn't turning now, and basically the access is off Exmouth Avenue, which is just, well, is a short cul-de-sac, which you can see. Yes, if you're on that shot, you can see looking up from the property towards Exmouth Avenue. The access is not great, but it is there at the moment, and in essence, this is not going to be much different to the property as it was as a single dwelling. It's a 3-bedroom property, or at the moment. There have been objections. There have been 7 letters of objections. The objections are set out in the report. They've been fully assessed, but on balance, it's felt that they don't represent sufficient reasons to justify a refusal of this planning application. So the recommendation is to approve the application, subject to the conditions given at the end of the report.
Thank you. Is that, could we have our first speaker, please, which is Mr. Macmillan? Just let me get I usually have Pauline on hand to do this, but now we're virtual, I have to do it myself. So you have 3 minutes from when you start, and I will warn you towards the end when your 3 minutes is up.
Hold on, Chair. Mr. Macmillan, I think you're going to have to unmute yourself at your end.
All right. Is that
okay, sir? Thank you.
Yeah. I've got serious concerns about this planning because the first planning that went through, my mum and dad's had nothing but trouble with antisocial behaviour, swearing. Like yesterday, the police were called out to the property because the young lad assaulted one of the carers. And obviously the parking as well is not exempt around here. You can't get parked anywhere. I mean, I can't even get in to see my mum and dad in their own driveway. Also, the carers have been parking on the pavement, blocking the path, which my mum can't even get past because she's disabled. And my mum finds it threatening because they're out in the gardens all the time, punching on punch bags. And my mum's scared to go out in the garden. She feels intimidated. And also Lucy Sutherland, I've been in contact with. She's doing a prohibition notice on it at the moment as we speak, because of obviously the swearing and slamming doors, and banging on walls, and shouting and arguing. And like I say, the police have been to the property on several occasions now. And my mum and dad are pensioners, and my mum is in ill health. So I totally disagree with what should happen to this property. And I think that's all I got to say on the matter.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Right. Can I ask the councillors for their comments or questions, please? Councillor Dady.
Hello. Sorry, I had to work out how to unmute myself. Right. Yes, I've got a bit of a concern here. Looking at the photos and so on, it looks to me like it would be impossible to get more than one car onto that driveway area, even if it's wide enough. And you can see also already on one of the photos where the grass bank has been churned up by cars driving where they shouldn't. So I think on that grounds it's unsuitable, but also I think just in general where it's located and the type of work that will be going on, I don't think this is a suitable building for that. So I'm in two minds about it, but I'm erring on not being in support of it.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else who wishes to come in at this point? Yes, Councillor Watt.
Councillor Watts. He seems to
have
be
frozen.
Yeah. Do you want to go to Councillor Isles next, perhaps, Chair?
Yeah, Councillor Isles. Well, Miss Councillor Watt sorts his pause.
He's an expert on computers.
We can't hear you very well.
Can you? Oh,
Now you
well,
can.
Now, the gentleman said that there was his mother is scared to go out in the garden. Is there a 6-foot fence around the back? Because if that is a problem to the neighbours from the garden, do you think we ought to ensure that there's a 6-foot fence around the garden area?
That's a good question, Councillor. Can you comment on that, please?
Me? Sorry.
Yes.
No, to be honest, I don't know. I've not been around the back of the property, so I don't know. We could condition the requirement for a fence if members felt it was necessary to do that.
Right. Thank you. We'll perhaps put that one in at the end. Councillor Watt, we're back with you now. You're back with us. Councillor Watt, please speak. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Sign language? Anyone else?
Councillor Addison wanted to come in.
I am back.
Councillor Watts back with us, Chair.
Right,
I
I'll
am
have
back.
Councillor Watts, then Councillor Addison, and then Councillor Kane.
Apologies for the technical difficulties. Am I still here?
Yes,
Yes.
you are.
Yeah. Yeah, I have concerns about this. This is we've got an elderly couple here. We in one sense are imposing this nuisance as it is now upon them. And just information about what age are the children that are accommodated this place?
I think it says at the beginning of the report 12 to 16 or something.
12 to 16.
Yeah.
Can be a difficult age. How many you say two staff vehicles and they're parking on the pavement? That shouldn't be. We've got existing complaints. The police have been out to it. I'm reluctant to impose this upon the neighbourhood. I understand that there could be children accommodated here that are perfectly sociable, but these children at the moment, or one of these children at the moment, is causing excessive nuisance to an elderly couple, which I feel very, very disappointed about. It is important that children are accommodating a normal community environment, but it would seem that perhaps some kind of barrier between them and elderly people would be better. Just from the noise point of view, you know, an elderly couple, they should expect to enjoy their retirement without nuisance. So I'm very in two minds about this.
Thank you. Councillor Addison and then Councillor Kane, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a 3-bedroom property and there's only going to be 2 children and 2 carers in there. And the children are going to be at school, I believe it says in the report, during the day. My concern was for the parking, as Councillor Dady pointed out, there seems to be people already driving over the grass. I presume that's not the people from this property, it's probably other people doing that. Is there any way that the access to the driveway could be widened to make it easier for access? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Have we got an answer to this, please?
Could you just re-show the location plan, please?
Yeah, hold on, please. I'll go. That one or the
one before, please? Yeah,
that one.
That's the one. Yeah. No, I don't think there is. Unfortunately, it's outside of the red line. The areas at the front of the property inside the red line, which is the subject of the recommended condition to make it half a metre wider, which should make it wide enough to allow 2 cars to park side by side. But I don't think we could reasonably ask for the width there because it doesn't appear to be in the ownership of the applicant either.
Thank you. Councillor Kane, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I hate to say this, but my question was on parking as well, and apologies to Mr. McMillan because it was me pipping my hooter very loudly on Saturday morning. So apologies to your parents. I couldn't actually get round that corner because cars were parked on both sides. Okay, my car's fairly big. It's a Mondeo estate, but it's not an ambulance. It's not a fire engine. And I really do think that, you know, before we can agree to this, we need to look at maybe that area outside of that red line and somehow extending and looking at that parking issue. I know from the report, Highways have not put up any objection, but I just wonder if Highways have actually tried to get round there because it's terrible. I've got friends that live in Croyd Avenue and trying to get around there sometimes is an absolute nightmare. I've actually on one occasion had to reverse back and turn around and go back round out Croyd because I couldn't get round Exmouth.
Seems to be a problem with access. Any other comments, please, from anyone?
Councillor Sims wants to come in, Chair.
Councillor Sims?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. First of all, I'd agree with Highways does seem to be a bit of a problem in that area. I'm familiar with the area. I haven't been there for quite some time, but I have heard comments through the public over recent months, and that that is an issue. I know, as it's already pointed out, Highways have already said they don't seem to, well, they had some issues and concerns raised within the report that's very clear to be seen. However, they've mostly, in their view, been addressed, and that, but most modern estates now, and even some of the older estates, the 60s, and even going into the 70s, but certainly modern estates, new estates, the roads are, people have 3 or 4 cars sometimes to a unit, to a house. And even some of these houses are multi-let houses, some aren't, but also even if they're not, as I said, there's a lot more cars parked for each house. Therefore, the roads are not designed for that sort of parking unless provision is put in at a later date. Now, with this sort of proposal going forward, I think it's going to add to the situation, worsen the situation. And if we have an emergency vehicle, which has already been pointed out, trying to get access, it could delay that emergency vehicle arriving at its destination, and therefore putting people's lives in danger. I think that's a major concern, and I wouldn't want to be part of that. So I think, as far as I'm concerned, we need to look at that. I would also like to ask is the speaker that came on earlier mentioned the fact about antisocial behaviour. Now, have the police or the crime convention, have they made any comment regarding it? Thank you.
Can I go back to the planning officer, please?
No, they've not been consulted on the application.
Right. I think.
Can I come in, Chair?
Yes, sure.
Can I ask why they weren't consulted on the application of this degree?
We don't always consult the police on planning applications. I can take the point you're making. Maybe they should have been. I don't know.
Again, Councillor Sims.
Yeah. May I make a contribution?
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Sims, it would normally be the crime prevention officer that would be asked to make an application. To make an observation on an application. In the case where it's a change of use and effectively the residential use still remains, all that is happening is that rather than having a single family dwelling house, you've got 2 carers and 2 children. So the residential use is still maintained. But if you like, it's just a different class to a care home. So in this case, we wouldn't have deemed it necessary to consult the crime prevention officer to make a comment on, if you like, the nature of antisocial behavior. And we wouldn't consult the police. The crime prevention officer would be the first port of call, who is an ex-policeman and who would guide us on designing out crime rather than dealing with issues to do with behavior. Issues to do with behavior, Councillor Sims, could be picked up through other controls that the council has.
Thank you, Edward. Councillor Kane wants to come in, and then we'll come back to Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate what Mr. Oteng's saying about the police wouldn't normally be involved, but I know this estate quite well, and I really think in this instance, before I would be happy to approve this, I would want input from the police, because there is an awful lot going on there that, with all due respect, planning and the people who are suggesting the care home is put there may not be aware of. There's an awful lot going on, I'm sure. Well, Mr. Millen clearly knows what I'm talking about, but I really do think the police should be, even though we're not obliged to, but I really think they should be consulted. I'm sorry if that's not a popular suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take on board what was said. I do agree that crime prevention would be the people or the organisation that you would ask in the first place to make comment on an application, and not always necessary to do so. Having said that, on this particular application, I disagree with the planning officer, because simply on this application, you can see it's got a history of antisocial behaviour in the area. The crime prevention officer needs to be made aware, and that he doesn't always see what comes up, and doesn't see the weekly lists. That he doesn't necessarily go onto local planning portal, so they may not be aware, but they certainly should have been given the opportunity to make comment. Now, you're absolutely right in saying that, you know, it's about changing behaviour, etc. However, we sometimes make a condition of these sort of issues when it even is a change in age limit, and it has happened in other authorities where they've put cameras up, you know, to monitor the area, etc. That may be something that could have been done. It's not even, they're not even being asked, and I think that's completely wrong and a mistake.
I think it's somewhere in the report there was something about CCTV cameras, Councillor Sims, because someone objected to them and said they would be unacceptably overlook their properties, and it was loss of privacy. So I take on board what you're saying, but I'm just referring back to the original report on point 41F.
Sorry, yes, Chair, I see that, but what I was really saying is I'm pointing out as an example. They should.
Right.
There's lots of other, you know, things you can put in place that could help alleviate and control any antisocial behaviour issues that may arise in the area. Because clearly we want to make it safe for the public, and want them to feel comfortable as well.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from Councillor Watt?
No technical problems this time. Mr. Otang mentioned that the council could take measures to alleviate nuisance. I've been involved with a nuisance in my ward, and it has taken many weeks, stretching into months, to alleviate that nuisance. I wouldn't want to impose this upon Mr. McMillan's parents. Is the journey that my constituents have gone through, and if there is nuisance and the council can take action, they should be taking action very, very promptly to return Mr. McMillan's parents' life to normal. So I am concerned that we are possibly imposing a condition upon Mr. McMillan's parents that is undesirable. After your family, the most important people in your life are your neighbours. They can make it either good or unbearably bad.
I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. Have we got any other comments at all, please?
Can't see any hands raised, Chair.
No, thank you. I think we're going to have to.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Stephen James wishes to come in.
Thank you, Stephen. We'd value your input.
Hi,
Legal officer.
As usual, I need to point out to the committee, just getting a flavour of the debate, should it be minded not to support the application that's before it, there could possibly be a cost implication, and there may well be an appeal implication. I think it's been a good reasoned debate, and I hear what people say, but I think the trouble is, it's the application before us. When we get into the realms of can we change this, can we change that, it becomes very problematic. And also, I think the other thing I think I should point out is that in support of what Edward said, this is basically a change of use class from C3 to C2. It may well be that members would want to see the police fully consulted for this sort of application. And I'm sure that's something that officers will take into account going forward. But on this particular case, it was standard procedure within Corby not to do so. And I just think it needs to be highlighted. And at that point, I shall leave the committee to actually decide the merits or otherwise of the scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Kane.
Sorry, Chair. I know I'm only subbing, but here I am causing havoc again. Chair, I'm just wondering, in light of what Stephen has said and taken on board what Edward and Councillor Sims and Councillor Watt have said about the police, is it not possible to defer a decision on this until the police have been consulted? Because I hear what you're saying, Stephen, about we're looking at what's on the table, but there is previous history and, you know, history repeats itself. I've had terrible problems on my patch with a similar instance, and I'd hate to see it happen again on Exeter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure where to go with this.
Well, Councillor Kane has suggested that the decision on the item be deferred until further consultations have been undertaken. I don't know if anyone's willing to second that. I can see Councillor Ray's wishing to come in.
Councillor Ray.
Chair, I'd be happy to second that recommendation from Councillor Kane.
Thank you. Right, so we're going with a deferral of this until the police are consulted. Am I correct? Have I got?
I think that's the proposal that's been moved and seconded, Chair.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask each councillor individually whether they are for the deferral. Councillor Watt.
For.
Councillor Addison.
For.
Councillor Latter. Councillor Isles.
For.
Councillor Sims.
For.
Councillor Ray.
For.
Councillor Kane.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Dady.
For.
And Councillor Riley. I am for the delay of this proposal. So I think we're all in an agreement for this. So we want to defer this until the police have been consulted and bring this to another meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. McMillan, so you understand that the application will come back to a future meeting once the police have been consulted?
Thank you. Councillor Dady.
I think I'm wrong on this. The highways didn't make any objections, did they?
No.
But we don't know that they necessarily visited the site.
Chair, sorry, can I just remind?
Now, we've decided the debate is over. That should have been brought forward before we made this decision.
One of the consultees when we consult the police. I thought the adjournment was to have more consultation. Can the consultation involve the highways as well as the police?
Sorry, Chair, can I bring in Stephen James?
We've already passed the motion. That should have been said, Councillor Dady, before we all voted.
Stephen James wishes to come in, Chair.
Yes, Stephen.
Hello, Councillor. Evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. The item is finished. The resolution for it was for it to be deferred for consultation with the police. And I think that's where we leave it. I understand the logic, but I think that's where we leave it, because there was discussion of parking, there was discussion of access, there was discussion of obstruction of the highway. And I'm sure these matters will be discussed again, but the Highway Authority has commented. Whether we like their comments or not is another matter, but they have commented.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. So we now move on to the second item on the agenda. Application number 20/00166/REG3. The change of use of land to form a lawn cemetery as an extension to the existing, including landscaping, new roads, paths and other infrastructure. Creation of a new surface car park for approximately 80 cars, erection of new staff welfare storage facilities and refurbishment of existing toilet facilities, including demolition of existing office buildings. Can I have the officer who is presenting that, please?
Chair, sorry, I think, did Councillor Sims want to come in before the report?
Yes, please, if I may, Chair. I tried to say at the start of the debate when it came in for declarations of interest, I wanted to declare a non-prejudicial interest in this item because I have spoken to someone who had a little bit of concern. I never spoke to give them any indication of which way I would look at this because I hadn't seen the report. I'd wait to keep myself open until the debate took place.
Thank you. So can we hear from the officer concerned, please? Is it
Yes,
you?
thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah.
So good evening, everyone. This application 20-00166 Reg 3 is a council application. The proposal is for change of use from a lawn cemetery as an extension to the existing, including landscaping, new roads, paths, and other infrastructure. The proposal also includes creation of a new surfaced car park for 80 cars, a new staff welfare building, refurbishment of existing toilet facilities, and demolition of existing office building. Next slide, please. This is the location plan. The overall site consists an area of 9.4 hectares and is located on the edge of the town. Vehicular access is gained off Rockingham Road. Next one, please. This is the aerial view of the site, which shows it is located to the south of the Rockingham Road. Part of the site includes an existing area of open space, which is a part of Rockingham Triangle Sports Complex adjoins to the west. The southern side includes residential properties beyond Humber Walk. Next slide, please. This slide shows the layout of the proposed development. The proposed scheme would provide space for approximately 3,000 plots, including a memorial garden and a dedicated area for Muslim burials. A small staff welfare and storage building is proposed to the southwest corner. Vehicular access for staff would be from the existing sports ground car park. The proposed scheme will also accommodate a new car park area for 80 cars and will utilize the existing internal access within the site. A new pedestrian path will be created to the south of the site within the new landscaped buffer area. This will connect to the existing path leading northeast from Humber Walk to connect to Rockingham Road. Next slide, please. So this is the existing access of Rockingham Road looking to the site. We have a couple of more photographs of the site. Slide, please. This photograph has been taken from within the site looking to the south, where you can see a glimpse of residential properties. Next slide, please. This is the existing landscaped buffer to the south of the site. Next slide, please. This is the existing path, Humber Walk. The previous slide, please. The previous one, please. Two previous one. Previous to this one, please. This is the existing path, Humber Walk, which runs along the landscape buffer and the residential properties. Next slide, please. And this is the view to the west, which you can see some mature line of vegetation. Next slide, please. So these are the key determining issues for this application development. As you are aware that this site comprises an area of open space and seeks consent for the extension of the existing cemetery site. It should be noted that Policy 7 of the Joint Core Strategy suggests that open space, allotment, sports and recreation buildings and land, including playing fields, should be retained where possible unless the facility is surplus to requirements, a site of equivalent quality and accessibility can be provided, serviced and made available to the community prior to the use of existing site ceasing. Council has provided evidence which sets out the impact of pitch quality improvements and pitch reconfigurations of the playing pitches within the borough, which suggests that the subject site is surplus of the requirement. Moreover, it is considered that the of pitches at Abington Road, Lowry Close and Tay Close will provide additional capacity beyond the identified need. Extensive consultation has been carried out with Sports England, and they have removed their objections subject. In terms of amenities.
Sorry,
Jana, we lost you there. Subject to what? You froze. We didn't hear that.
Sorry, subject to planning conditions.
Thank you. Carry on.
In terms of amenity, due to the nature of the scheme, it is considered that the development would not result in any adverse impact to the adjoining dwellings in terms of loss of amenity. In terms of landscape and visual amenity, cemeteries are considered as low impact development. A landscape buffer zone is also proposed around the southern edge to restrict visual impact from the residential properties. The subject site is located within flood zone 1. Lead local flood authority has been consulted in relation to flood risk and raised no objections subject to drainage conditions. No objection has been raised by County Highways Authority and County Ecologist. So taking all the relevant planning considerations, the proposal is considered to be compliant with the provisions of Joint Core Strategy and is well. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just let my colleague know you're breaking up quite badly? Can you repeat that last piece, please?
Taking all the relevant, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, the acoustics aren't great, to be honest.
Thank you. Taking all the relevant planning considerations, the proposal is considered to be compliant with the provisions of Joint Core Strategy and is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have our first speaker, Mr. Garrison, and you will have 3 minutes, please, from when you start to speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, I think my objections purely lie on a sort of ecological standpoint. I've spoken to a large number of residents who border the proposed extension, and their belief was that there are birds, bats, a number of wildlife that live along the border that will be either disturbed or removed. And whilst I did see in the agenda that that's been addressed by, I think you put nesting. Let's go for that. Nesting boxes, which to me just sounds sounds illogical. It's literally like paving paradise and putting up a parking lot. I think a lot of the residents that live along the border of the proposed extension had in their original deeds, I believe 30 or 40 years ago, where it stated that there was going to be at least one extension to the cemetery. That did take place to what currently is the border. Again, the promise for that was not what was actually cited there. So, for example, if you go back, I don't know if you can bring up the presentation again. Would that be okay?
Not sure.
If you go back to the, I think it's three or four back from there. yeah, that one. If you see the border that exists there at the moment, that was going to be a landscaped buffer. I'm not being funny. Could anyone here class that as a landscaped buffer? I think not. Alongside that, the amount of greenery within the area, that's okay, you can take that presentation down there. The openness and greenery of the area will obviously be affected. That goes without saying, because we're basically taking up open space and putting up man-made buildings and gravestones. That's been a quite a large issue with your constituents, and in all honesty, the people that I've spoken to weren't happy with the proposal as it stands. No one.
30 seconds left.
Thank you. Most of the people that I spoke to said that they were worried that the new border would create a large restriction in terms of like the traffic that currently goes there towards sort of the industrial areas out to get it to work, essentially. And that's
you wind up now, please.
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry. And yeah, I guess in summary, it's not being something which will be happily accepted. But yeah, obviously, yeah, hopefully we can consider something different.
Thank you. We now have Mr. Wiggins, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Can you have 3 minutes from when you start?
Thank you very much. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Lance Wiggins. I'm the Director of Landmark Planning. I've been acting as agent for this Regulation 3 application for an extension to the cemetery. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. As the National Planning Policy Framework advises, planning law requires that planning applications be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Your officer's report highlights the important issues that are raised by this application, and I share your officer's view that the application is in accordance with the development plan. Furthermore, there are no material planning considerations that indicate that it should not be approved. A number of the members of the committee will be aware that we carried out an online public consultation exercise in respect of the proposal prior to the application being submitted. All nearby local residents and a number of sports clubs and community groups were consulted. All the representations received were recorded in the submitted statement of community involvement. The scheme was generally well received and only a small number of concerns being received. The proposal was subsequently reviewed to ensure that the existing pedestrian path to and from Rockingham Road, that's Humber Walk, is retained. In response to concerns concerning the loss of open space, the proposal includes a significant linear area of compensatory open space, which would be planted to separate the cemetery extension from nearby houses. This open space will be available for all local people to use for dog walking and for children to cycle on. The loss of the existing playing pitch has been extensively discussed with Sport England. A number of briefing notes and an update report have been prepared to demonstrate there's a surplus of playing pitches available to cater for current and future demands for football teams in the borough. A number of playing fields have been improved to maximise their use and improve their quality. These improvements, together with the new pitches coming on stream in the future, will ensure that pitch at Rockingham Road can be used as an extension to the existing cemetery. All concerns raised by Sport England have now been overcome, as confirmed by your officers. As members will be aware, the future capacity for burials in the borough is down to 1 to 2 years. Capacity is under increased pressure due to the ongoing pandemic, and the proposed extension should make provision for the next 20 to 30 years. A number of alternative sites were considered prior to deciding to prepare a proposal for an extension here. However, this was the only feasible site to come forward. I'm pleased that only a small number of objections have been received. To touch on just a couple of those, I can advise the proposal would not give rise to a risk of flooding to adjoining properties, nor would there be a significant increase in traffic visiting the site. The biodiversity of the site, which has just been referred to, will be increased as a result of additional planting, which will be carried out, and no pollution would result.
Can you wind up a little, please?
There are no objections to the scheme from any of the council's officers, technical consultants, and therefore I hope that members will support the officers in delivering this high quality proposal.
Thank you. Can I now invite councillors to comment, please? Councillor Addison.
Thank you, Chair. I think the elephant on this side is the Gaelic football pitch, which if we'd been able to negotiate that, we could have moved the cemetery into that space, and that would have left a bigger buffer zone. But in saying that, Chair, my concerns are about the drainage, because I know this site fairly well, and it does get flooded, and the cemetery at the moment gets flooded. Can we be assured that adequate drainage will be put into the site? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I come back to you, Vijana, for this, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. First of all, on response to Mr. Garrison, I would like to inform you that condition 12 and condition 4 has been suggested by county ecologist, and later the applicant has submitted a precautionary method statement, which is also reviewed by the county ecologist. And in addendum report, you'll see there is an amendment of that condition, condition 12. So she has confirmed that she is happy with the precautionary method statement. And in terms of drainage, we have consulted lead local flood authority and the drainage engineer. He has predicted a drainage condition and no objection has been raised.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Addison? Do I have any more comments from any councillors at all? Councillor Dady, and then Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you. It's a couple of items of clarification I'd like, please. Sorry if I missed this on the report, but I can't see it anywhere. These 80 extra spaces, there only appear to be a few marked on the plan. I assume what they mean is by creating 80 extra spaces, it's actually just sharing the existing spaces that are already there, that are used by the football club and athletics club and so on. So actually it's not any new spaces, or not very many. There's only a few marked on the plan. The second thing is, I can't find this on the report, but what was mentioned about potential new sites, such as Lowery Close and various areas, which was just mentioned in the report a few minutes ago. I just wondered if that could be re-explained, whether there's potential new cemetery sites being looked at, or whether if we give this approval now, these other sites won't be looked at, and so on. So just a bit more clarification of what was said in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Carry on, Fujana.
Okay, thanks. In terms of alternative sites, the council have carried out a feasibility study in 2019 February, and they have the report identified that this is the only viable site for an extension, and the existing site will be full of capacity within 1 or 2 years' time. So this is the only site which can be taken into account for next 20 to 30 years.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, did you have?
Yes. Oops. Mr. Garrison mentioned about some agreement on properties that are there and one extension already, some legal agreement. Is this something we know about, and has this been looked into?
Yeah. If I may respond to that.
Please, Mr. Oteng.
Yeah, Councillor Brown, the question of the deed of covenant that may exist between the owner occupiers that border the current cemetery is a civil matter. So we as a planning authority wouldn't be obliged to concern ourselves with that. And it will be something that the owner occupiers will have to take up with the cemetery owners, if you like.
Thank you. Do we have Councillor Watt? Followed by Councillor
Sorry,
Isles.
Chair, Councillor Isles and Councillor Sims were ahead of Councillor Watts. Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Isles and then Councillor Sims and then Councillor Watt. Councillor Isles, I can't hear you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear now?
I can now, thank you.
Good. Just a bit of information about flooding. I lived up Cherwell in the early 70s. The whole way along Humber Walk used to be a ditch because there were cows in the field then, and that ditch used to take the flooding away, and now the ditch has been filled in. Just that's a bit of information I have, which might be helpful to planning officers or whatever flooding.
Thank you. I'm sure the planning officers will take that into account. Councillor Sims, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've gone through the report. I think clearly, obviously, Corby has been a successful town in developing and going forward with its plans to expand the borough over the years and through regeneration. Now, with that happening, of course, with a bigger population, we're going to increase in burial pressures, as has already been pointed out in the report. However, it was in contravention of local planning initially in terms of sports in sports fields. However, that and obviously Sports England had an issue, but now they've lifted their objection, and I see as a note came through today, condition 14 has been added to that relating to Abington road fields, etc. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, what they're going to do there. That would be interesting to know. The other issue, and it was brought up by one of the speakers there in relation to the buffer zone, or what he terms as a landscaped area, but in particular, the one across Humber Walk. Now, according to 8.12 on the report on page 8, it talks a little bit about the topography and the buffer zone. I think it's a 14-metre wide strip. Now, you've seen from the photographs in the presentation that we just had that along Humber Walk, the bushes there, I wouldn't say it's landscaped. I would say it's in a pretty bit of a mess, to be honest. And although I would say it's probably it doesn't look very nice, and it attracts antisocial behaviour, litter. If you look through them bushes, they're absolutely full of litter. It's not really cleaned. I would like to think going forward, it would be included on a regular maintenance landscape programme to make sure that area is kept clean, especially when you think it's going to generate a lot more pedestrian footfall going to the industrial estate with a free road route. Now, I know I can't put that down, I couldn't suggest to put that down as a condition, but I'd like to think the local authority going forward would make sure that's addressed. And if we think now, recent times, landscaping in Corby has much improved, which I'm glad to see. But I would be happy to propose this report, or having said what I have, but I would like to hear more about condition 14, please.
Can I come back to you, Edward or Fajana, about condition 14?
Yeah, in the short response to Councillor Sims, condition 14 has been drafted in collaboration with a discussion with Sports England. They withdrawn their objection and suggested that those conditions be imposed on the applicant, which I think is fair. On the question of litter along Humber Walk, there could possibly be a condition related to maintenance in terms of adequate litter patrol, placed on the applicant, which you could consider. So Sports England's objection has been withdrawn. There's a suitable condition offered in place. I'll defer from my colleague Fazana to perhaps just expand a little bit more on that condition.
Thank you. Fazana.
Thank you, Councillor. Paul, if you can kindly bring up the proposed site layout, please.
That one?
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Sims, on your question of landscape maintenance, I would like to kindly inform you that condition 11 is imposed for landscape management plan, which will also include the management and maintenance schedule. And as you can see from the proposed site plan, that the existing area is also included within the landscape management. So the whole area, the whole stripe, the new one and the existing one will be under that management plan. And thank you. And in terms of Councillor Dady's question on the new car park, 80 car park, I would like to invite Mr. Wiggins to say the response.
Thank you. Mr. Wiggins, would you like to respond about the car park, please?
Yes, Chairman, thank you very much. Unfortunately, just off the plan that was just being displayed, just off that drawing, there is actually a separate plan prepared for it. Just off that plan, there is the details of what is in fact a separate car parking area for 80 car parking spaces. Councillor Dady's right, there are additional car parking spaces within the layout, but on a separate different plan, which I haven't seen displayed as yet, there is actually a large car park suitable for accommodating 80 cars.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Dady? Do you want to come back to that?
Yeah, I'd like to know where it is, because as was just pointed out, it's not on the plan.
Madam Chair, if I may just
yeah,
address Councillor Dady's concern on that.
Yes, please.
Councillor Dady, if we could crave your indulgence, forgive us. We tried to make the presentation as comprehensive and as short as possible. So that plan has been omitted from the presentation, but the plan showing the new car park will form part of the schedule of plans that will form part of the consent. So it is a plan that the applicant will have to comply with and implement.
Thank you.
So can I
come back to that if you wish, Anthony?
Yeah, thank you. So have you got somewhere earmarked for this parking then? What I'm saying, obviously, it's not practical. It's going to be nowhere near where the site is, or if it's going to take up more land, which has already been prone to flooding and so on. So it would be useful to know approximately where this parking is going to be. Thank you.
Councillor Daly, if I could defer to Mr. Lance Wiggins to directly respond to that particular point. Mr. Wiggins, through the chair, thank you.
Yes, carry on, please, Mr. Wiggins.
Thank you, Chair. Slightly difficult to illustrate, but essentially just to the right of where the blue text says car park, above the circular turning head, that is essentially where the new car park would be located. So close to Rockingham Road, essentially to the northeast of where it says car park in blue.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Daly?
So Yeah, I'm not quite sure. So within the current boundary of the cemetery.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments from any councillors? Councillor Watt, sorry, I beg your pardon. You've been waiting very patiently.
Yes, I did actually put my hand up before Councillor Sims and Councillor Isles, I'd like to point out.
Okay, I apologise, it's very difficult to see on the screen, as I'm sure you appreciate.
Yes, it's been noted. I noticed Mr. Wiggins mentioned the linear route, children's cycleway on it. It would be, I think it would be very pleasant if this was actually a cycle route with like demarcation, pedestrians one side, cyclists the other side. Will there be any street illumination, low level illumination in this linear route? I must say that the linear route looks very nice, and I think Mr. Garrison, I would say it would probably enhance the area. If you look at the number of trees that are going to be put into the cemetery itself, and the number of trees that are going to be planted, and the maintenance of the area, I think it's actually going to be a benefit to the north of the town along that area. But it would be nice if it was a cycle route.
Thank you. Mr. Wiggins or Fajana? No comment on that one. Just a comment. Thank you. Right. Do we have any further questions or queries? If not, do we have a proposer for this at all? Councillor Addison. And Councillor Isles, did you have a seconded? Or was it Councillor Sims? Councillor Isles.
Councillor Sims, I think.
Yeah, Councillor Sims. Yep. Councillor Addison proposes this. Councillor Sims seconds this. I'll go to a vote. Councillor Watt, are you for or against this?
For.
For. Councillor Addison?
For.
Councillor Latter? Councillor Isles?
For.
Councillor Sims? Councillor Ray?
For.
Councillor Kane? For. Councillor Brown? Councillor Dady?
For.
Councillor Riley? For. So this new proposal for the exchange of dues to the extension has been passed. Thank you. And that ends the meeting. Thank you to everyone who attended this evening, the speakers and officers and councillors. And now, this time I usually say have a safe journey home, but as it's only in the next room or whatever, just have a very pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and officers. Thank you.
Chair.
Bye.